These are my financial disclosures. Let's see. I have nothing to disclose, but like almost everybody in this room, I do have a pretty strong bias for gene therapy and cell-based therapies to work. And you can see all of medicine really does, because since 2012, you can see well over 1,000 protocols have been approved for going forward in trials. And the list there shows the number that are taking place at my institution. And of course, who wouldn't want therapies that help these young patients with inherited retinal disease? So I think we all have to recognize the bias that identifying complications and costs maybe isn't what we're really driven by. But there is a very large group of regulatory bodies that companies sponsoring these trials do have to satisfy. But most of the trials are carried out with non-disclosure agreements. So the reports may go to the FDA, but at meetings like this, one may not talk about complications. And so that's what I chose to talk about. There's a similar group of regulatory agencies for flight safety. You can see that listed there, but also the quote that appeared after the 737 MAX that the Boeing and the FAA had an almost symbiotic relationship, and the relationship is too cozy. Is that a problem for us? Well, I think we certainly try for it not to be, but if you follow gene therapy, you would have seen this headline, which said that the FDA says some data from Novartis's $2 million gene therapy was manipulated. Now, this didn't lead to not going forward with FDA approval, but it does show that we all have to be concerned about the way these trials are conducted. So when you think about complications of gene therapy, you can look at it in groups. And these agents are very different than a lot of our pharmacologic agents. There's a lot more that goes into the pre-surgical manufacturing and development of the agents. Then there's the typical surgical considerations. And then there's an immune response. And the idea that the eye is immune privilege is really not accurate. It does have a definite immune response. And then there's the wound healing things, which also are not that different from surgery. But I'm going to concentrate on a couple of these. So when these viral vectors are made, and AAV and lentivirus are the principal ones that have been used, there's a lot of other material that's present when they make the vector. And that can be removed in the process, but it's probably not removed completely. And you can see from the list that some of that is probably going to be inflammatory. So again, you're not going to see in most articles about gene therapy pictures of patients that might have a complication. And this is not a patient, this is a non-human primate. It was in preclinical studies with an AAV vector, and you can see fairly pronounced inflammation there. And that is something you'd really expect, and it's not necessarily bad, because we're injecting a virus after all, and it's likely going to elicit an immune response. So this is data from the Luxtura trial, and you can see the clinical trial consisted of 41 patients, and they did report subretinal deposits and eye inflammation, which really one would expect to see. But I'd point out to you that with a trial size of 41, there's a 33% chance of not detecting a complication that has a 1 out of 100 frequency. So as people doing these treatments, we really need to be aware of things that can show up post-approval. Now, how about cell-based therapy? So this is a primate that we treated with autologous cells that are fluorescent, and you can see that over time, the cells disappeared. So even though these are autologous cells, there is an immune reaction to them. And you might look at these cells along here and think, hey, that's great, you've got a nice monolayer of cells. But those are actually microglial cells. When you do the staining, it shows that they're an immune response to the cells. So immune response and wound healing is definitely going to be a factor with these different types of therapies. Well, what about cost and the need for gene and cell-based therapies? We recently looked at the new onset of legal blindness in Oregon and reported in this study 14 to 21% of it was due to inherited eye disease. And RPE65 is a very rare disease, but when you start adding up all of the different inherited diseases, it gets to be a pretty substantial population. And there are 2 studies studies that have been reported about the cost of Luxturna. And you can see that the cost of treating both eyes is $850,000 for the aged. And you can see that there's a very wide spread of the qualities between these two studies, 80,000 to 640,000. That's because of differing assumptions about the longevity of the effect. But do we really need the qualities to know that cost has become an issue? If you just take that amount for treating eyes and you apply it to the more common diseases like Stargardt's or spinal muscular atrophy, you can see that pretty soon you're getting to costs that are going to rival what Medicare is currently budgeted to spend. So cost will definitely be an issue as we develop these very important agents. So in conclusion, I think we all need to be aware of the way our trials are done and the way that complications are reported, and so that we don't think when we see presentations that there isn't the potential for complication. They can be surgical, immunologic, or wound healing. And for the cost, I do think that we're going to have to find alternative funding mechanisms in order to bring these therapies to our patients. Thank you.